And so this is something I'm happy to announce that we've made a lot of progress on. CAP is an EDXL standard, Emergency Data Exchange Language Standard. At this conference, we joined forces with the OASIS Technical Committee. The Interoperability Summit here today was to kind of bring the good news that NIEM and CAP, NIEM and the other OASIS standards under the Emergency Data Exchange Language Specification are working together. And we are hoping that that success that we showed in the interoperability demo, the success of using the distribution element messaging format and passing around a NIEM exchange related to Amber Alerts. I saw one around a hurricane information passing around the room from small devices to computer systems to emergency operation type systems. That message passed around. It was NIEM conformant. It was a NIEM package, and I think that we have more work to communicate that we are working together better, but I think we have some great success just in that we were able to join forces and show and prove that it does work. So I appreciate your comment, and we hope that you are involved much more deeply in the emergency management domain and the development of that domain as we move forward. So thank you.
I'm Gary Ham. I'm a support contractor to FEMA's disaster management program, and I've been a OASIS Emergency Management Technical Committee member from its initial founding. But my comment isn't even about that. I think we've gone already past that. We know the cooperation is working. I'm commenting about, we had some talks here, we had some things said here about the enormous planning effort and the extra work that's needed to make huge systems work. I think we call that, and I think we've seen it a lot, are diseconomies of scale in very, very large systems. One of the real values of a reference exchange defined through NIEM, defined using the IEPD process, is we don't have to build such big systems. We can actually say, let's build a small system that meets a specific need and make sure it can communicate with all the other small systems that meet specific needs using a standard reference exchange so that we can actually reduce some of these diseconomies of scale of the bigger systems. And I think that's a real value that some of the IEPD process in particular coming out of NIEM provides.
I totally agree with you. I mean, you've kind of, I think, hit the nail on the head as from the standpoint of why NIEM has been successful, and it also harkens me back to why we kind of took the path we did at Justice in our development of not only NIEM but our whole law enforcement information sharing program. There's no way that I could build and influence the systems that are run by or start from scratch and pretend that I'm going to build the systems that are going to be used by 20,000 organizations. It's just a differential equation that's too complex to solve. So the way you do it is by getting to these message exchanges, and that's the birth. That was the germ of the idea of how we had to get around the information sharing problem and solving the information sharing conundrum for law enforcement. So that is the strength of NIEM. It provides us the flexibility to break the biggest problems down into smaller ones and to figure out how those smaller ones are going to work together. And that's the crux of it. The other thing is that, and this goes back to a point that Vivek made, in order to invest the time to develop those reference exchanges, there has to be a need. There has to be kind of like a burning platform. So one of the things as practitioners we need to do is to make sure that we are kind of offering up what those burning platforms are. Why do we need what is the substance of the exchange that needs to happen, and why is that important to the overall success of the enterprise? I think that's key. But NIEM is absolutely critical in the overall issue of breaking down the huge and making it manageable.
Hi. As a federal data architect, I've been watching for some evolution of the FEA's data reference model or further guidance. I was wondering if you could speak to maybe NIEM's relationship to filling in guidance in that area, and additionally, the evolving initiative or new initiative for the federal health information model?
Sure. So the data reference model is one of the 5 reference models of the federal enterprise architecture. There's 2 initiatives that are very prominent. One is here, NIEM, that implements the exchange-oriented aspects of the DRM. The other is data.gov, that looks at the dissemination aspects of the DRM. I think, focusing on NIEM, we look at NIEM as a best practice. You heard that from Vivek. You've heard that from me several times. NIEM is the leading implementation of the data reference model. It's the only one I'm aware of that's got the ability to scale. And so one of the initiatives that I'm driving, and I think I mentioned it when I was making my remarks the other day, is the federal segment architecture methodology that we put out and better integration of NIEM. We have a first pass at that actually came out of the NIEM PMO. I'm looking for volunteers that are going to help me take that a little bit further and integrate it into the 2.0 version of the federal segment architecture methodology. So if you're interested in volunteering, or anybody else, just reach out to me. And as many of you know, but many of you don't know, the way we evolve the methodology and frameworks around the federal enterprise architecture is through a community process, very similar to NIEM, with some of the same funding challenges. So I am looking for volunteers and people that are passionate about this to help capture the best practices and share them back to the community.
As I like to kind of follow up on that, NIEM is very mission-oriented with a lot of the exchanges that are going on right now. Do you foresee the opportunity to actually fold NIEM into the architecture level to actually pass the actual, I guess, meta-architecture so that organizations between each other sort of know the sharing spaces between each other?
Yeah, so you're talking about being able to share data inventories, metadata, exchanges, and so those are all things that are underway. And actually, we have one of the leading practitioners in the federal government, Donna Roy, in her day job is the director of enterprise data management at DHS, and they've done a lot of work in this area. Many other communities across the federal government have also done a lot of work in this area, and it's clearly a topic that we should address going forward as agencies mature their data architecture practice to have the sort of registries and metadata that you're talking about, making sure we can more effectively share across agencies. I don't know, Donna, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do at DHS?
I think that I might disagree that the DRM at this point needs to be more mature or grow as a reference model. I think much more, I would rather focus on the richer implementation of the current DRM. And I have found no gap at the Department of Homeland Security in using that reference to build inventories of our data, to build inventories of our information exchanges, and to create that discovery layer that allows us to now say, at least in the department, we know a lot more about what we didn't know 2 years ago. If we did any exploration of the DRM, I think it would be the federation of the discovery across the federal government to ensure that the work that we're doing kind of moves up that layer. So I think a lot of work's been done internally at a lot of the federal departments. It's not exposed. And when I opened my keynote and I talked about that there is a kind of a gap in information sharing at that discovery layer. So internally we don't know what we don't know a lot of times, but externally across the federal government and across your government levels as well, there isn't a great place to ensure that we're presenting that information. And I think we are working through some of those with Shemendra and providing that at a data.gov level and extending that out.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Mike Hume from Unisys. I think I put 4 questions in your box yesterday, so I'll see if I can tackle asking one of the questions anyway. One of the issues that has been faced with NIEM and has been with the IPD development has been kind of an inconsistency in IPDs because people go off and they develop an IPD, and 2 organizations may independently develop an IPD that is this trying to meet essentially the same business needs, but it ends up being arbitrarily different because you have two different organizations that are doing it. So what are we doing to foster the increased development of reference IEPDs so that organizations have something to work on that they can start from, so that their IEPDs will be more consistent with each other?
I'll take a stab at this, but I think I'd like Bob to back me up a little bit. I think that these reference IEPDs really need to, in a lot of ways, some need to come top-down, like we do at the Department of Homeland Security. But most of them, I think, need to come out of the communities of interest. So the work that's coming out of global and the pushing up of the suspicious activity report as one of those reference IEPDs is our challenge back to you and back to your communities, right? So we can't do those top-down, and we need to figure out how do we create that collaborative space that allows the knowledge that two organizations are trying to do that same thing, are trying to create an information exchange. Specifically, I know this happens in the health information exchange, those networks, right? So we're throwing up regional networks for HIEs, and probably significant duplication of work across an information exchange set. And we want to solve that. I don't think we have a great answer other than it's a community building bottom-up type of activity.
Yeah, I think that's a good description of it, and at least on the justice side, again, through the global committees and the task teams and just hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that are working on that, it's constantly finding ways for people to communicate with each other to address those issues that you're talking about.
You know, the reference IEPD issue, I look at it as primarily a governance issue, right? Is there an organization that's got the authority and the ability, understands the problem, wants to tackle it? There's some technical aspects to it, but, you know, by far the governance issues are bigger. At the federal level, I mean, it's a slightly different thing, right? We have organizations like, or entities like the Federal Enterprise Architecture. You know, one of the things that we're looking to do more strongly is have every one of our lines of business do modernization roadmaps using the federal segment architecture methodology. As they build out their target to be conceptual solution architecture, we want to see reference IPDs for the core information exchanges, the cross-boundary information exchanges. Right? There's a framework in the federal, at the federal level to be able to do that through the FEA, right? We can register them with the FEA. We can work through the tools issues, the metadata issues, the standards issues to be able to share those. And you know, but I think that taking that more broadly, it goes back to different organizations seeing that the NIEM is mature enough now to come together, right, and leverage existing bodies like Global or what have you to be able to do that.
I'd like to, I'm Paul Wormley, Executive Director of the IGES Institute, and I'd like to add on to the earlier comment about outreach to particularly the local government segment. It appears to me that we're doing a fairly good job of outreach to the key federal agencies, certainly through the wonderful work Donna's been doing in DHS and Van's been shepherding in DOJ. And the states are pretty much informed about NIEM and are moving forward in various ways, but there really is a huge gap at the local level. The agreement just in fiscal year 2008 to reach consensus between DHS, BJA, and the COPS program on a special grant condition is helpful because at least every grant that goes out from DHS, DOJ to in the fields of law enforcement, public safety, have that special condition that exchanges must conform to NIEM, and the reference IEPDs must be returned to the clearinghouse. And that's great progress, but what I think the local world needs is more advice, education, training on how to reflect the use of NIEM in their RFPs. The way that industry helps a lot with this evangelism, but the way you really spark the interest of industry is for the preponderance of RFPs that come out to incorporate a requirement that the work conform to NIEM in some way.